Hey guys, it's Sandro here, and today's video is a look at how to remove water spot etchings on both car paint and glass. So this is a 2007 Mercedes E-Class that belongs to a colleague's friend, and it's actually a super low mileage car in great overall condition. It was in the shop mostly to do some testing and other content, so I initially wasn't going to do a video on this car. But after a bit of testing, I thought it could be a great car to demonstrate water etching removal, as it's just so bad in this area. Now in the shade, the paint looks great, but as soon as the light hits it, the water etchings are just so extremely bad that even after washing it, it still looks dirty. Now unsurprisingly, the owner lives near the beach, which is where this car spends most of its life, hence all the water etchings that are just so hard to avoid on a vehicle that lives near the coast. Now I've already washed and decontaminated this car using acid-based detergents and chemicals, which is the first important step in removing water etchings. I've already gone through this process in some previous videos, so I'll try and add a link here or in the description box if you want to see that process, which I highly recommend. Because as bad as the water spots and etchings look right now, they actually looked a lot worse before the acid bath and cleaning, which was able to remove, at least in part, some of the mineral deposits, meaning that it's going to make the correction process in removing them easier and quicker compared to not doing this acid cleaning beforehand. I'm also going to demonstrate on glass, but to start with, let's have a look at the paint, which is typically easier to remove water etchings compared to glass. I mentioned that I've already done some testing on this paint to try and work out what the best technique and combination will be to remove the water etchings on this specific paint. If we have a look at the 3 test sections I've already done, you'll hopefully be able to see that the first test section using just a light polish and finishing pad was able to remove some of them, but quite honestly not all that much. And what's more, the finish itself is rather haze or oxidized with poor clarity. In other words, it's just not a great result. The second test section using a medium compound and intermediate foam pad is far better, removing most of the water etchings and also many of the other defects such as swirls and oxidation, and the finish itself is actually fairly good. So a much better result than the first test section, but there's still room for improvement. The third test section using a heavy cutting compound with a foam cutting pad has removed not only all of the water spots, but also 90 to 95% of the rest of the defects, and finished extremely well with fantastic gloss and clarity, being without a doubt the best section of the 3 in all areas from defect removal to gloss and clarity. So what does this tell us? For one thing, this paint is definitely on the harder side, as light to medium compounds and pads just weren't able to remove enough of the defects, and the fact that a heavier cutting compound and foam cutting pad were able to finish almost perfectly also indicates that it's a harder paint, as on a softer and more sensitive paint, this combination just wouldn't have finished so well. So all in all, it's plain to see here that using a heavy cutting compound and pad not only gives us the best defect removal ability, but also the best finish, which isn't always the case, but is definitely the case here on this particular paint with these particular defects. This is the reason you should always do some testing, as every paint and its defects are different. So let's do another test section on another panel to go through some technique and to also confirm these results. As you can see, I'm using Scholl Concepts S2 Black on the ShineMate Yellow light cutting foam pad with the ShineMate 15mm 5-inch cordless polisher. I've got 4 drops of compound on my pad. I'm working a ½ meter square section, using speed 5 with moderate pressure and a slowish arm speed, doing 4 to 5 vertical and horizontal overlapping passes, taking me about 90 seconds in total. This is more or less a standard technique and combination for lightly compounding car paint or doing a one-step correction on a harder paint, which is slightly more aggressive than doing a light polish, but also less aggressive than heavily cutting back car paint. I'll then wipe the area with a cloth, use an IPA cleaning solution to remove polishing oils, and then inspect my results with some good lighting. All in all, it's a fantastic result. Pretty much all the water etchings have been removed along with the oxidation and swirls. There's a few deeper scratches here and there, but on this job I'm really not chasing or worrying about them too much, as the water etchings are my real concern as well as restoring gloss and clarity to the finish. If I did want to pursue an even greater level of correction, that would entail using more aggressive wool or microfiber cutting pads, and most likely a second finishing polishing stage to restore and amplify gloss and clarity even further. The consequences in doing that would mean sacrificing more clear coat and obviously investing a lot more time and cost to pursue it, which is definitely something you can weigh up and make a judgment call for each particular job. So as a whole, removing water etchings is in essence no different to removing car swirls, scratches, and oxidation. And light water etchings can be removed just as easy as light swirls, while heavier water etchings can be as difficult to remove as deep car scratches. So it all depends on the specific water etchings and the paint you're trying to remove them from. It's also important to note that water etchings can in fact etch their way right through the clear coat into the base coat and primer, in which case they will not be entirely removable. So let's have a look at removing water etchings from car glass. What you'll generally find is that water etchings are far more difficult to remove from car glass compared to car paint, simply for the fact that glass is a much harder material than paint and also tends to etch more severely than paint in many cases. Now, after doing a couple of test sections on the glass, it was plain to see that the same combination I used on the paint just wasn't going to be aggressive enough to remove the water etchings on the glass. In fact, it wasn't even close. So what ended up working for me was using the same S2 black compound, but this time on a wool cutting pad with a rotary polisher. I started by using a smaller 3-inch pad to remove the water etchings from the edges and corners of the glass, because a larger pad just wasn't going to give me enough correction in those tighter areas. But then I followed up with my larger 5-inch pad to remove the etchings from the larger, flatter panel sections of the glass. As far as technique goes, I set my rotary polisher to a mid to high machine speed, used 2 to 3 drops of compound on my pad, but worked much smaller sections at a time to increase aggression, and used heavy pressure with a moderate arm speed, polishing for about 30 to 45 seconds at a time. So all in all, this is an aggressive combination in technique, which in many cases is required to remove severe water etchings from car glass. The great thing about polishing glass is that you don't have to worry about removing clear coat like on car paint, and you also generally don't have to worry about leaving compounding haze in the finish, because glass is a super hard and non-sensitive surface compared to car paint. A bit of advice I'd give is that if you don't remove the water etchings after a set of passes, polish a different section and allow the glass to cool before you try again, as although it is extremely unlikely unless the glass is already fractured, it can on rare occasions shatter when extreme heat and pressure is focused on one particular area for too long. I won't lie, it's a lot of hard back-breaking work, and it takes a lot of time to remove water etchings this bad from car glass. As a reference, it took me the best part of an entire day just to remove the water etchings on all this car's glass. I've had a bunch of detailers and enthusiasts contacting me in the past saying that no matter what they tried, they couldn't get the water etchings off the glass. Trust me, they will come out eventually. It's just one of those things that sometimes takes more work than you thought imaginable, or sometimes more work than is worth it, as it could be cheaper replacing the glass rather than spending hour after hour correcting it. Every time I do a video on glass, I always get the question about removing scratches. In my opinion and experience, I never pursue scratch removal on car glass because as hard as water etchings are to remove, scratches on car glass are 10 times worse and harder. Superfine swirls can be removed using this same method and technique, but anything deeper just isn't worth pursuing and usually requires specialized diamond cutting discs and a skilled operator. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I unfortunately wasn't able to do a whole video on this car due to circumstance, So I'll leave you with some final shots of the vehicle, which I think turned out great in the end. It wasn't a super high-end job or anything like that, just a good solid detail with quite a big impactful improvement. I think as I'm continuing to get a little longer in the tooth, I'm enjoying this level of detailing as it's a fantastic result without being full-blown, labor-intensive and stressful high-end work that can sometimes be a little detrimental to physical and mental health. Not to mention that it also eliminates a certain segment of the market that just can't afford that more costly level of work. It was still a good solid 3 to 4 days work, so it's not like it was a cheap detail in any way. But if I was going all out, it would have been more like 2 weeks of full-time work, and that's the real difference between pursuing a great result and going for a near perfect result. It just takes a lot more time. I think I'll leave it there, guys, and if you enjoyed this video and would like to say thanks and help support future content, you can do so by buying me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/ccad, in which I'll have a link to in the description box, and thank you everyone for the support so far. As always, I really hope you guys enjoyed and found this video useful. Please share it with others, give it a like and comment below to show support for this content, and I'll see you guys soon.